On January 19th, 2012, No Umbrella Media and the Sat Pail took a field trip to Blue Hill, Maine to gain a deeper understanding of the issues connected to the State of Maine lawsuit against farmers Dan and Judy Brown by talking with some of the local people directly involved.
Worst day of farmer is better than the best day in that truck. She loves to point that out to me. I'll come in, got kicked right in the head by a cow one day, had manure coming right down my face. I said, Judy, you get out here and help me with that damn cow. You wanted to be a farmer. I hear that you wanted to be a farmer more times than I care to say, but I do.
It's not easy. Dan thought it was going to be an easier way of life. I said, you don't see a lot of rich farmers now, do you?
Yeah.
But it's rich in the way that you have everything you need right here, everything. I just started making soap. I'm in my 50s. I've never made soap before. You know, it's just one more thing you do to be self-sufficient.
The only farmhand I have is her, and the only farmhand she has is me. So, you know, if I don't do it, she's got to do it. So if I'm talking to lawyers or talking to you folks, you know, that's just more work that Judy's got to do.
Well, my name is Florence Reed, and I'm the founder and president of Sustainable Harvest International. And I started this organization about 15 years ago, in great part because I felt that it was important that people be able to grow their own food and sustain themselves on their own land and not be dependent on anybody else to feed themselves.
I have to say one thing, one word that we were really careful not to use was consumer, because one of our friends and customers at the time said, you know, I'm not a consumer. Consumer, if you look it up in the dictionary, just means like you consume and you destroy and you leave a swath of destruction. And, you know, you really shouldn't use that word in the ordinance. And so we thought about using end user or customer, but we ended up with the term patron because a lot of our relationships with people do go beyond just a customer that buys food from us.
I'm Joe Hermans, this is my son Finley. We've lived here for 8 years, and I engage in a variety of part-time work in healthcare and carpentry. And I try to be home as much as possible. My wife takes care of Finley and our 4-year-old daughter. And I like to be home to be able to do what I do around here in the homestead, gardening, raise a few pigs, raise a few chickens, and just be able to see my kids grow up rather than just hearing about how they're growing up when I'm off working. So that's been the driving force for us while we're here, is to not farm our kids out to somebody else, and to try to have some sense of where our, at least vegetables and a tiny bit of our meat and eggs are coming from. Yeah, you like meat? Meat. Yeah. And so we got to know Dan and Judy pretty much when our 4-year-old daughter was beginning to be drinking something other than mother's milk, and that they're the closest raw milk provider that we knew, and then we've got to know them, and we've been real happy for 4.5 years now. Every week, a gallon at least of milk and a pound of butter, and Emily's drank that before, during, after pregnancies, and it's the second type of milk Finley and his older sister has had to drink. And whether we make yogurt or bake with it or just drink it, never had a problem. And been real happy to be able to just say, hey, can we get an extra gallon this week? You know, can we get you got any sour cream or any other little product that she makes from the milk. So it's been really good to have that, because we've known from the get-go that on this homestead we were not going to have a dairy cow. At least not that I was going to milk. So.
Dan is the farmer who sells us our milk and our eggs, and we've been buying our milk and our eggs and some cheese and other products from him since he started selling, I think about 5 years ago, right around my son was born. And we buy our milk from him every week, and it's the only milk that my family has had for the past 5 years, and it's less expensive than what's in the supermarket, and I think it's better for us than what's in the supermarket. And I have complete faith that it's a safe product, because Dan knows us and we know Dan. When we go to the farm, my son, goes running up and he hugs Dan, and Dan returns that affection, and I know he cares for my family, and I know that he would not sell us anything that he thinks might hurt us. And I don't have any such faith in any corporation that might be selling us milk. So for me, it's really all about just making sure that we can keep buying milk from Dan, because I have no doubt that it's the best and safest milk that we can buy for our family. And I honestly haven't had time to get involved with a broader issue. I know there's an ordinance that has been passed in a lot of towns to protect this kind of relationship and allow us to have this kind of relationship with the farmer who sells us our milk. And so I certainly am 100% in favor of that, and I think it's outrageous that it even has to be an issue, that anybody would consider trying to take away my right to buy milk from Dan.
What it is shortly after I got Judy to stay home, we started looking for avenues to sell our products. So I contacted the Blue Hill Farmers Market, and I started selling all my stuff down at Blue Hill Farmers Market. One day, somebody asked me there, says, "How long you had your license?" "What license?" "I don't have no license." I said, "If I had a license, I'd be in Hannaford. I just want to come to the farmer's market." Oh, Jesus. Within a week, the state inspector called up the manager of the Blue Hill Farmers Market and said, you can't have him there. He can't be selling his stuff without a license. And it was unbelievable. They were buying my stuff. We could have had 10 cows. The response was unbelievable. People loved it. Oh, after they told him that, I said, okay. So I came home. I called the Department of Agriculture, the same people that called the manager of the farmers market. I said, so how can I sell my stuff? If you sell from your farm and you don't advertise, you're good. That's the way to operate. You will be legal. You won't be breaking any laws. Okay, great. We didn't want to do it, but we built a farm stand. Before that, we didn't really want to do it. We wanted to go farmer's market, but fine. We'll build a farm stand. We'll sell right here from the property. We went along like that for a few years. And then somebody new came into the Department of Agriculture in 2009, and there was a reinterpretation of the rules. Not the laws, no laws have changed, but the rules, they reinterpreted the rules, and they call us milk distributors now. There's no place in Maine for us small farmers doing a few cows and doing things like this anymore. They flat out told me that there is no way for a farmer to do what I'm doing and sell milk legally anymore, since they've reinterpreted the rules and call us all distributors. After one day of John Morris coming in and saying, you can't do this, you're breaking the law, you got to close. I literally closed the doors on the farm stand and said, what am I going to do now? And I called up the other farmers around the area and found out that I wasn't breaking the law. I'd never looked at the laws before. I just do what they tell me to do. So Phil and them came over and they showed me the actual statutes and the laws, where it says no license shall be required from any person or persons selling milk, from their farm only. I mean, it's right on the books. And the description of a producer as opposed to a distributor, it's very obvious right on the books that I don't fall into that distributor category. So I opened back up, and I've been re-inspired, and ever since then I've just said, look, I don't need your license. I'm selling right here from the farm. Nobody sells. I'm not advertising. But that's where I started working on the ordinance, and that's where I started getting involved with the other farmers here in the peninsula. I really hope, I've said this to Judy and everybody, that by spring we're able to hit a plateau in this lawsuit, because I don't know how we're going to survive if I've got to do planting and cutting hay and call lawyers. It just, you can't do it. There's not enough hours in the day.
It sucks the life out of you.
Yep.
It really does.
Yep.
morning, noon, and night. We don't have enough time to get done our chores because of the phone calls. You know, if it's not the lawyers, you know, we want to talk to the supporters. We don't want to put them aside. They're all we got right now, helping us through this. So
yeah, literally, that'd be a good way to put it. Sucking the life out of you. I mean, it consumes your life. If you're not careful, it will literally consume your life. You'll spend every minute thinking about it, talking about it, worrying about it, something. Yeah, so it's pretty profound how it's affected us.
Having this licensing and that sort of thing makes all the sense in the world if you're talking about some huge operation that's selling to a lot of people that don't know the farmers that are producing the food. Then I think it makes all the sense in the world. I just think it just doesn't make any sense at all when it's one person buying food from one farmer who they know and who they've had a relationship with for years. That's when it just becomes ridiculous.
We, the people of the town of Blue Hill, Hancock County, Maine, believe our citizens have the right to produce, process, sell, purchase, and consume local foods, thus promoting self-reliance, the preservation of family farms, and local food traditions. We recognize that family farms, sustainable agricultural practices, and food processing by individuals, families, and non-corporate entities offers stability to our rural way of life by enhancing the economic, environmental, and social wealth of our community. As such, we believe that our right to a local food system requires us to assert our inherent right to self-government. We recognize the authority to protect that right as belonging to the town of Blue Hill. We have faith in our citizens' ability to educate themselves and make informed decisions. We hold that federal and state regulations impede local food production and constitute an usurpation of our citizens' rights to foods of their choice. We support food that fundamentally respects human dignity and health, nourishes individuals and the community, and sustains producers, processors, and the environment. We are therefore duty-bound under the Constitution of the State of Maine to protect and promote unimpeded access to local foods. Well, on our farm, what happened is we had a retail store license, so an inspector was well within his authority to come and talk to us about our practices and what we do. And at the end of our first growing season, where Phil was back at the farm, we raised poultry, and he wanted to know where we'd butchered them. And we had shared a facility. A neighbor down the road has a processing facility. He'd allowed us to use that in exchange for labor and a price for each bird, and then we'd contributed our labor to help him process his birds. So when the inspector came and asked us how we'd done it, that's what we told him, the truth, that's how we'd done it. And he said that wasn't a legitimate thing to do, that we couldn't use our friend's facility, and that it wasn't state laws, but it was USDA rules at the federal level that prevented us from doing that. So we asked Dr. Buffet if we noticed, we read through those rules and noticed that there was an exemption that could be granted, allowing him to share his facility. And she said that it had been often asked for, but nobody had ever been granted that exemption. So we knew at that time that the poultry exemption had passed through the legislature, and our understanding was that that would permit us to sell and process birds directly from our farm to the people that came to our farm to buy them. And this inspector at that time told us that that wasn't going to be the case, that his department intended to write the rules that would be equal to the federal rules, which would essentially require us to build the same type of facility that our neighbor down the road had. And that wasn't an economically feasible option for us at that time. And their second option was that we should just go and take them to a licensed facility. And in the state of Maine at that time, there was one option for us to use if we wanted to resell the birds, and that was 3 hours drive from our house. So again, that was just not an economically feasible thing to do, and it wouldn't have been healthy for the birds at the end of their lives either. And then a couple weeks after that, the same inspector told us that the way that we were selling milk from our farm store was also no longer considered a legal way to operate. And when we'd started, the inspectors that we called told us that as long as we were selling from our farm and we weren't advertising, that we could sell it without any licensure and inspection. And that's how we bought milk for 10 years before that. So we set up our farm store under those guidelines. And then 4 or 5 years later, an inspector came and told us that wasn't legal anymore. So that process, there was no public hearing, there was no way for citizens to weigh in on the change, but it definitely had a substantial effect on our farm. And it, at that moment, it became clear to me that if they were coming to our farm to tell us these things, there were lots of us around the state of Maine that were being told the same thing, that we could no longer operate the way we always had. So that's when we started asking questions about how do these rules get made, who's making these rules. And I remember feeling like the biggest kind of rock in my stomach at that moment was driving home from Augusta to pick up my kids in Brooksville. And it was winter and everything was quiet and everything seemed very peaceful. And just being astonished that federal rules that were being made in Washington, D.C. were reaching into me being able to sell food to our friends. And I remember just feeling like that was impossible. How could that be? There was no reason for federal involvement with our neighbors' transactions. So that's what prompted us to look for alternative ways to democratically affect change, to just be able to preserve what we're doing and to preserve the kinds of relationships that come out of the way that we exchange food. So that's what led to the ordinance. And then, too, when we started asking questions about who was making the rules and followed the chain of command up to the USDA and FDA, the individuals in those agencies are corporate agriculture. And when we discovered that, of course, that just felt so wrong. How can Cargill and Monsanto be making the rules that are governing our farms and preventing our friends and our neighbors from getting food from us? So we really felt that we needed to take a stand and act with our neighbors in our town to protect what we were doing.
We've been living in South Korea for the last 10 years or so. My wife's from New Zealand. I'm originally from Ohio. I've lived here since last spring. And we moved here because we wanted to settle down, raise our family, and we're attracted to this area. Well, we've been in 2 CSAs so far, a summer CSA and a winter CSA at King Hill Farm here in Penobscot. And through the farm drop program, we get our dairy, yogurt, and milk from Quill's End Farm. So we kind of try what we don't grow ourselves, we try and buy from the farmers that are closest to us.
Businesses fail all the time, markets go up, markets go down. There's so many factors that impact it, and people in this country know it better than ever today. There's so many factors that impact whether or not you can earn enough money to buy the food to feed your family. And if you don't have the skills to grow your own food and the money dries up, then you're literally left looking at starvation for your family. Whereas if you know how to grow your own food, or your neighbor who is going to look out for you and not let you starve knows how to grow your own food for your community, then that is something that really guarantees you a standard of living where you're going to be able to have a decent diet for generations into the future. Whereas if you put all of your reliance on money, in the end you might find that you can't eat money.
Absolutely. We don't want to provide milk to the masses. People need to be able to go to the grocery store and buy a good, clean bottle of milk, and they do that, and that's what comes from our system of a big dairy, where maybe that farmer doesn't have a personal one-on-one relationship with it, but he's a good man, and it goes to a processor who's a good processor. I worked for Gravelwood Farm for many years. Benji Grant hired me at Grant's Dairy, worked my way up through the company, went to work, stayed with Gravelwood. I've seen that side of it. And they're good people doing a good job. And then it goes on to Hannaford, and good people again there selling it. So that side is always going to be going on. But for the individual that wants to take that next step, feels a little bit stronger about the connection between them drinking the product and where it's coming from and who it's coming from and what it's fed, then I'm there to meet that need. And if they come out here and they look at my operation and it doesn't meet their need, I'll put them in touch with half a dozen other farmers around that hopefully can meet that need. And if we still don't, you don't feel comfortable, definitely go to Hannaford and buy your gallon of milk.
Well, they got shut down. I mean, I think what the Amish were doing was great. And I think my problem there was, you know, this was a group of consenting adults saying, we all want to share this cow. And they were told they couldn't do that. So they had cooperatively bought one animal and were cooperatively taking care of it. But the state said, you know, you can't do that, you're selling, even though there was no actual transaction of money even. So that indicates to me some kind of problem, or maybe indicates even further up in the federal level that there's some lobbying or pressuring going on that's not friendly to family and small farmers, that's working to promote large corporate farmers instead, which I think is not an uncommon situation.
Grow a ton of pumpkins. I try to put, you know, a couple hundred pumpkins in if I can. We put them in the basement. California says they got happy cows. Nah, you ain't seen a happy cow till I come around the corner in February with a pumpkin. And them cows come down that hill, the udders just flying, and just, they love pumpkins in the middle of winter.
My husband was a kid growing up on a farm in Minnesota. He saw all of the laws change in what I guess would have been the 80s that started favoring the big corporate farms and were stacking the deck against the family farms, and that contributed to his family's farm going bankrupt back in the 80s and caused horrible hardship to his family. But
well, I think the state is actually trying to do it in two ways. They're trying to do it in the courtroom, and they're trying to do it in his heart, because I know that, or I have the sense, I don't know, I have the sense that this is just wearing him down, and that even if they can't win in the courtroom, they just want to wear him down and make an example of him. And I think that was clear as soon as I heard about the whole case. And I'm pissed because I don't want them to stop raising 1 or 2 cows, because then I'm not going to get the same milk in the same convenient location with the same flexibility and the same quality that I've been able to get. And I'm also just pissed off that the state is spending State of Maine tax dollars to do this.
The local foods ordinance was particularly important to us because at that time in Korea, for the last several years, they'd had a lot of agricultural issues where they'd kind of had a hyper centralization of their agricultural system, and the point where diseases were spreading because they only had mega farms and they were burying live pigs, you know, because they'd all get diseased, and live poultry and stuff, and it ended up where they had to go around entire towns spraying the towns with poisons to clean them, you know, so it was a pretty bad situation there, and that's something I certainly don't want to have coming near me anytime soon.
2 1/4 to 2.5 gallons a day. You know, we've got just enough milk to supply my family and I, my wife and my daughter, and then 2 other families, and that pretty much uses up all the milk we have is between us and the 2 other families. That's all of it. You know, it runs about $8 a day. Is about what we're making on the milk. You know, not a lot, but it gives us all the food, all the butter and cheese and everything we need here, and a little bit more to sell.
And I'd love to get another cow right now. This is the time of year where I can spend time in the kitchen making the butter, you know, that we sell in the summer and things like that. But I don't think we should get another cow right now, not with the state, you know, ready to come in. Geez, they could come in tomorrow and take the animals away from us if they wanted to. And so there's just no sense in getting one more cow.
Yeah, we had talked about getting another cow and having pigs here on the farm. Right now we buy pigs from other local farmers in the spring, raise them up for ourselves, maybe 1 or 2 other people, and we were going to start keeping a boar and a sow here. We put that on hold. And we had another 100 chickens coming that were going to lay more eggs, and we canceled them because we just don't know, you know, where this is going to go and what we're going to be doing.
Well, to me, I like the idea of real food, you know, something that is not very processed, something that might still be alive or fermented or have some organisms in it that are beneficial to my health, not food that's been packaged and processed to the point that there's not much left in it, you know.
He knows where that milk came, and he's going to drive 100 yards up the road and be standing in my dooryard at my front step going, what's going on? You know, how there is no other more accountable system than that. These are my friends and neighbors right here that I'm selling this to. We look at the meat recall that just happened in Hannaford. That's horrible that that happened. They're never going to know where that beef came from. It gets put into a giant system and it goes. If there's a milk problem at a larger scale, even if they can trace it back to Gorelick, and I hate to single them out because they're great people, they're going to trace it back to a truck and trace it back to maybe one of these farms. And then they're never going to know what cow. I can trace it back right to the cow. Not only does Diller know that it came from Gravelwood Farm, but Dan at Gravelwood Farms knows which cow it came from, because I'm only milking one cow. So the problem's over right there the minute it's found. And I'm a phone call away. Every single person that buys my milk has my phone number and talks to me all the time. And they can call me up, and we go from, that cow's getting milk tonight. Tomorrow morning, that milk goes to Diller's house. He calls me in the afternoon. We're done. There's no more going out. So you've got 2 gallons that got processed. That's it. No more is going out. That's how fast I can shut it down. That's what this system is all about.
I guess the biggest step in my mind is just getting to know the people that you buy your food from, or that are producing your food. So if I buy at the farmer's market, I like to buy from the same people. I get to know them. I get to know their children. My son plays with their kids. We talk about our families.
John Morris, the guy that's been giving me a hard time for 2 years, you know, I'd go have a cup of coffee with him anytime. He's a good man. I got no problem with him. He's just doing his job. But, you know, I kind of look at it this way. I'm just doing my job. You know, my job is to be a farmer, milk cows. You know, so we need to change the rules, not the people.
And I think that people just don't see that connection, that the state is just trying to wear it down so that you don't have the option to show up at your friend's, your new friend's farm and say, I'd like to buy some extra milk if you have it.
If I could have it, it just needs to go back to the way it was. I mean, every administration before this, every dairy inspector, every state vet that's ever been in charge of here, in charge of us for the last 100 years or longer, has interpreted it this way. As long as we sold from the farm and didn't advertise it, we weren't breaking any laws. Well, what are everybody for the last 100 years wrong and these guys are right? I just don't believe that. How about they were probably doing it right and we've just gotten off into a wrong direction here. More towns are passing in the local food and self-governance ordinance, and they don't want to pay attention to us in the 5 towns right now, but maybe when we got 50 towns they'll listen to us.
I think the best thing to do is really to speak up and let those views be known to the decision makers. And so in our state, that is our Quality Assurance and Regulation Division. It's the governor. It's their legislators. And in our area, the legislators are really representing what the people in our area are saying and have gotten that message and are trying to take that message to Augusta. So I think writing letters to the editor is helpful, and any way that they can speak up and just let people know we care about our farms and we want the way that we're exchanging food to continue to.